I'm a 45-year-old guy, and I've been married to my wife, she's 42, for about 5 years now. She has a 17-year-old son from her previous marriage, so I've been his stepdad during that time. Up until recently, we were all living together under one roof. I've got Addison's disease, which is a serious autoimmune disorder. Basically, my adrenal glands don't produce enough cortisol, so I have to take medication every single day to stay alive. If I miss my meds, I can go into something called an adrenal crisis, where my whole system starts to shut down. I wear a medical alert bracelet, and everyone close to me knows that my medication isn't optional, it's life-saving. The problem is, my stepson has never really taken my illness seriously. He's always brushed it off, like I was making a big deal out of nothing. Anytime I needed to rest or said I was feeling worn out, he'd roll his eyes or toss out some sarcastic remark like, "Guess your miracle pills aren't doing the trick today, huh?" I tried to chalk it up to typical teenage attitude and let it slide, but the truth is, it stung. My wife did call him out when he acted disrespectfully, but I could tell he just didn't buy it. One time, I even overheard him on the phone with a friend, saying he thought I was faking it, that I was some hypochondriac taking sugar pills just for attention. I told myself it was just immature talk, and that he'd grow out of it eventually. Turns out, I was way off. A few months ago, I started dealing with symptoms I hadn't had in years, things like constant fatigue, dizziness, and muscle aches. At my most recent doctor's appointment, my labs showed that my hormone levels were off, almost as if I hadn't been taking my meds at all. But I had been. Every single day, like clockwork. My doctor was just as confused and even suggested that maybe the pharmacy had messed up and given me a bad batch. He upped my dosage temporarily, thinking maybe my condition was worsening, but despite that, I kept feeling worse and worse. I couldn't figure out why my health was spiraling when I was doing everything I was supposed to. Then, about 6 weeks ago, I was home alone one Saturday afternoon. My wife was out shopping, and my stepson had gone to hang out with friends. Out of nowhere, I started feeling incredibly weak and lightheaded. My stomach hurt so bad I could barely breathe, and the nausea was overwhelming. I knew then I was probably going into adrenal crisis. I managed to call my older brother, who's 48 and lives about 10 minutes away. He told me later that I was barely making sense, slurring my words and saying something like, "I don't feel right, I need help," before dropping the phone. He rushed over and ended up having to break into the house after seeing me passed out on the living room floor through the window. He called an ambulance right away. I was rushed to the ER, and by the time I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with my wife and brother by my side. I'd had a full-blown adrenal crisis. My body had basically shut down from lack of cortisol. The doctors had to pump me full of steroids and fluids to stabilize me. They said I was dangerously close to not making it. Everyone was confused because I'd managed my condition so well for years. The doctors asked me if I'd been taking my meds properly, and I said absolutely, I never missed a dose. My wife confirmed it too, she sees me take them every day. That's when they decided to test the pills themselves because something wasn't adding up. I'll never forget the look on the hospital pharmacist's face when he walked into my room. He looked worried and said, "These aren't your real meds. There's no active ingredient in them at all." I just sat there in disbelief. "What do you mean?" "These are the pills I've been taking every day," I told him. He explained that while they looked exactly like my actual medication, they were basically fake, probably sugar pills or something similar. Totally useless. My wife and I were stunned. Our first thought was that the pharmacy must have messed up in a massive, dangerous way. We gave the hospital the name of the place I used, and they called to investigate. But it didn't take long for the truth to come out. The pharmacy hadn't made a mistake at all. They double-checked the lot number on the bottle, and it matched their records perfectly. The pills I'd received were legit when they left the store. That meant someone had swapped them after I brought them home. I looked at my wife and saw it hit her too. We were both thinking the same thing, my stepson. He had access to my medication and had never believed I was truly sick. As horrifying as it was, everything started to click into place. Still, I didn't want to believe it. The idea that he could have actually done something so cruel felt unreal. But there was no sign of a break-in, and the way the pills had been switched out little by little explained why my symptoms had gotten worse so gradually. My wife broke down crying and left the room to call her son and her ex-husband. Meanwhile, the hospital had already notified the police. Tampering with someone's medication, especially life-saving meds, is a serious crime. Before I could even process it all, a police officer showed up to take my statement. I told them everything I knew, still completely in shock. I kept repeating, "I can't believe he might have done this." The police went to our house that night to speak with my stepson. Since I was still in the hospital, my brother later filled me in. At first, my stepson denied everything. Said he didn't know how the pills got switched. But once the cops explained how serious it was, that they could test the pills for fingerprints, he broke down and admitted it. He confessed that for months, he'd been secretly replacing my medication with over-the-counter pills that looked similar. When I heard that, I absolutely lost it. I started crying. This kid, who I've supported and cared for like my own, had nearly killed me just to see if I was really sick. According to what the police and my wife later told me, his reasoning was twisted. He figured if I was really sick, I'd get worse without my meds, and if I was fine, then I must have been faking all along. So he decided to run his own little test. Well, he got his answer. I nearly died on our living room floor. He let me waste away for weeks, watching me get sicker and weaker, and didn't say a word. Even after I was in the ICU, he kept quiet until the police confronted him. That's not just immaturity. That's something darker. That's cruelty. He showed the police where he'd hidden my actual meds and the stash of fake ones in his bedroom. He'd been replacing a few pills at a time so I wouldn't catch on. The amount of effort and thought he put into this, it's terrifying. I'm back home now, physically recovering, but emotionally, I'm a wreck. I can't even stand to look at him. He's been staying with his dad ever since this all happened. The police took his statement and filed a report, but since he's a minor, it's all a bit complicated legally. Still, I absolutely plan to take this through the justice system. At the very least, I want there to be a record of what he did. My wife hasn't been taking things well either. She's emotionally torn between the man she married and the son she raised. She did apologize and was clearly horrified by what her son had done, but at the end of the day, that's still her child, and she's been a mess of sadness, anger, and confusion. I made it very clear, I'm never going to live in the same house with him again. She accepted that. I'm still furious, beyond hurt. I came inches from death because of his twisted little experiment, and I honestly don't know if there's any way for us to come back from this as a family. If anything changes, I'll update again. First update thanks to everyone who reached out after my original post. It's been around 2 months since everything happened, and honestly, my whole life has flipped upside down. A lot of people asked what happened after the hospital. Well, I didn't just let it fade away. Once I recovered enough physically, I was determined to make sure my stepson actually faced consequences for what he did. The police already had his confession, so I moved forward and pressed charges. Since he's 17, the case went through juvenile court for felony poisoning and medication tampering. The result? He was found delinquent, which is basically the juvenile court version of guilty. But to me, the punishment felt incredibly light. He ended up with probation, some mandatory therapy, and a bit of community service. That's it. For almost killing someone. I was livid. Meanwhile, my wife, well, now ex-wife, but I'll get to that, was just relieved he didn't end up locked up. She kept repeating, he's just a kid who made a huge mistake. But to me, what he did wasn't just a mistake, it was premeditated and cruel. And if the justice system wasn't going to deal with him properly, then I was going to handle it myself. Call it revenge, call it justice, I don't really care. I needed to do more. So here's what I did in the weeks that followed. 1. The break-in, I wanted to get access to his laptop. More than that, I wanted him shaken up. One weekend while they were both out, I slipped into his room, took the laptop, and hid it. I also lightly trashed the place, moved a few things around, broke a latch on the window to make it look like someone had forced their way in. When they got home, I acted shocked. Looked like we'd been robbed. The only thing missing? His precious laptop. I didn't touch anything else. I wasn't about to actually rob myself. My stepson completely lost it. We filed a police report about the fake break-in. Not proud of lying to the cops, but I kept the story vague and didn't file any insurance claims. The cops chalked it up to some petty thief who saw a quick opportunity. Meanwhile, the laptop was tucked away in a locked drawer in my office. He never had a clue I was behind it. 2. Tanking his college admission. At the time, he was finishing senior year and had just gotten accepted to a solid university. As the victim in the criminal case, I had access to the police report and all my hospital records. I made copies and put together an anonymous packet. I mailed it directly to the college's admissions office. I included a letter saying something like, "You should know that this incoming student committed a dangerous act that nearly resulted in someone's death." A couple weeks later, boom, he got a letter saying his admission had been revoked. They didn't go into specifics, just said they received troubling information. He was crushed. Just like that, his college future disappeared. He and my wife tried to appeal, but the school wasn't budging. When I casually asked if they ever figured out what caused the school to rescind the offer, my wife said, "Must have been the police stuff. Someone must have sent it to them." I just gave her a raised eyebrow and said, "Wow, that's rough." I think she suspected me, but she never outright asked. 3. Civil lawsuit. My hospital stay and follow-up care cost a fortune, even with insurance. Since he's still a minor, I couldn't sue him directly, but I could go after his parents. I decided to leave my wife out of it, but I went straight for his biological dad. The guy's got money, and honestly, I've always gotten the sense he passed down that your illness isn't real attitude to his son. So I sued him to recover medical costs and damages tied to the incident. My lawyer's confident we've got the confession and medical proof. It's just a matter of time. My wife absolutely flipped. She begged me not to drag her ex into it, saying it would ruin their co-parenting relationship. I told her flat out, I don't care. Her son almost killed me, and someone's going to be held accountable whether they like it or not. From what I heard back when we still spoke, her ex went ballistic. Screamed at her, screamed at his kid, called him the dumbest human alive, and was furious about the possibility of footing a massive bill. Honestly? Good. Let him feel some of the damage for once. For online humiliation, remember that laptop? Yeah. Once I had it, I found something that made my blood boil even more. He had a private folder of videos, stupid little clips of him and a friend mocking disabled people and folks with chronic illnesses. In one, he dressed like me, fake taking pills and pretending to collapse, mocking my condition and calling me stepdaddy the faker. I snapped. I picked out a few of the worst videos, edited them together, and posted them anonymously on a local Facebook community group and on a subreddit that calls out awful behavior. I captioned it something like, "Here's what a local 17-year-old high school senior thinks of chronically ill people. This is the same kid who was just in court for nearly killing his stepfather." It spread fast. Parents, teachers, friends of the family, everyone saw it. People were disgusted. His reputation in town tanked overnight. He became a walking disgrace at school. And honestly, I think that hit harder than the legal punishment ever could. 5. The family bombshell of the final blow came at his grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary dinner. Big family event at a nice restaurant. Despite everything, I was still invited, mostly because my wife and I were in this awkward, maybe we'll fix things phase. My stepson was there too, avoiding eye contact and looking miserable. Most of the extended family didn't know the full story. My wife had kept things vague, just said I'd been very sick and there was some tension. That night, during the toasts, I stood up and set the record straight. I told the entire room that I'd nearly died recently because my stepson had intentionally tampered with my medication in some twisted attempt to test whether I was actually sick. I made it clear I'd ended up in the ICU and that this wasn't some teenage prank, it was a serious, life-threatening betrayal. My mother-in-law looked like she'd seen a ghost. Other relatives gasped or just sat there frozen. And then? All hell broke loose. My father-in-law shot up from his chair and immediately started yelling at my stepson, demanding answers right there in the middle of the restaurant. My stepson sat frozen, completely red in the face and too stunned to say a word. Meanwhile, my wife lost it. She started shouting at me, furious that I'd brought everything out into the open. "How could you do this here?" she screamed. But I didn't back down. I told her, why shouldn't they know? Their grandson nearly killed me. The entire anniversary dinner unraveled in seconds. My father-in-law had to be held back, some family members were trying to calm everyone down, and others just sat there glaring at my stepson. The elderly grandparents were quickly ushered out, they looked heartbroken and overwhelmed by the news. That was the end of the celebration. No cake, no final toasts, just chaos. My stepson bolted out of the restaurant in shame, and my wife rushed out after him. I stayed back for a moment and pulled my in-laws aside. I apologized for the scene but told them, "I'm sorry this ruined your evening, but imagine how much worse it would have been if I had died and nobody ever knew why." Then I walked out and drove home by myself. That night, my wife never came home. She stayed with her parents, bringing our stepson with her. My phone lit up with a storm of angry messages. She accused me of trying to destroy her son's life, of humiliating them both, and of crossing an unforgivable line. She said she couldn't even look at me after what I did. After that night, the only times we spoke were to argue. She admitted her son had done something horrible, but she was still enraged at how I responded. According to her, I'd gone from being the victim to being vengeful and heartless. I told her flat out, "Your son nearly killed me. I don't feel sorry for him." Her response? "I don't even know who you are anymore." Honestly, I didn't recognize myself either. I had never felt such intense anger in my life. Eventually, she told me she wanted a divorce. Between me ruining her son's college plans and calling him out in front of the whole family, she said she couldn't forgive me. From her perspective, I'd torched her son's future out of spite. But from where I was standing, he nearly ended my life, and I wasn't even close to even. We separated immediately. She and her son moved in with her parents, and we haven't seen each other since. I haven't exchanged a single word with my stepson, and my wife and I only speak through lawyers or quick, dry texts about paperwork. My emotions have been all over the place. On one hand, there's a sense of justice knowing that my stepson didn't just walk away from this like nothing happened. But on the other hand, I lost my marriage in the process. I truly loved my wife, and until all this happened, I was genuinely happy with her. That's gone now, and I've probably burned every bridge with her extended family too. So yeah, there's been a lot of fallout. Was it all worth it? In the heat of the moment, absolutely. But now that things have cooled down, I don't know. What I do know is that I couldn't just pretend none of it happened. Maybe I did go nuclear. But the way I see it, my stepson brought the bomb to our doorstep when he started messing with my medication, and I just lit the fuse. So here I am. No wife. No stepkid. Pretty much starting over on my own. But at least I'm alive, and he didn't get away with it. As for my ex-wife, our relationship is beyond repair. I don't think she ever truly understood how deep that betrayal cut. Maybe she never will. We've officially started the divorce process. I'll share another update once everything is finalized. Update 2. Hey again. It's been about 7 months since my last update. The divorce is done. Finalized about a month ago, and now I'm officially single and living by myself. All things considered, the divorce itself went smoothly. We didn't have kids together, and we managed to settle the division of property without dragging it out. We sold the house, and I let her keep most of the furniture. I didn't really care to fight over those things. At one point, she tried to argue that I should pay alimony since I earned more, but my lawyer shut that down real quick. Given the circumstances and the fact that I'm suing her ex over medical costs, that argument didn't hold any water. She backed off. Once everything was signed, we sent each other a short, polite text wishing each other well. That was the last time we spoke. 5 years of marriage, wrapped up in a few signatures and a quiet goodbye. Emotionally, I'm hanging in there. Last year was hell. Physically, I recovered from the adrenal crisis within a few months. But mentally? That's where the scars stuck. I've developed a lot of anxiety around my health now. Every time I take my pills, I check them 2 or 3 times. I even bought a small locked safe to keep my medication in, even though I live alone now. That fear of someone tampering with them again, it's hard to shake. I still have nightmares sometimes. I'll wake up thinking I'm back on that living room floor, paralyzed and helpless. Or I'll dream that someone I trust is trying to poison me. My therapist says it's likely PTSD, and yeah, that checks out. It's going to take a long time to feel truly safe again. On the legal side, the civil lawsuit against my ex-stepson's father is still ongoing, but it's looking promising. A few months ago, his attorney reached out with a settlement offer. He's willing to cover a large chunk of my medical expenses if I agree to drop the case. I'm considering it. My lawyer's trying to push for a bit more, but we're close. Honestly, I'm just tired. I want this whole chapter closed for good. It's not about revenge money or anything like that. I just don't think I should be stuck with the financial burden of someone else's reckless actions. As for my ex-stepson? Still zero contact. From what I hear, he didn't end up going to a university after all. After his college pulled the offer, he ended up enrolling in a local community college instead. Apparently, the combination of losing his admission and the social fallout hit him hard. A mutual acquaintance mentioned that he's been keeping a really low profile. Word is, he even stuck with therapy after the court stopped requiring it. Maybe he's trying to change. Maybe he's not. I can't say I wish him well, but I also don't actively wish him harm. I just want to move on. He's no longer a part of my life, and I'd like it to stay that way. The doctors told me I was incredibly lucky. If my brother hadn't found me when he did, there's a very real chance I wouldn't be here. That truth hits me hard, even now. It's something I carry with me, this constant reminder of how close I came to dying. As heavy as it is, it also makes me deeply grateful to still be alive, even on the rough days. Am I still angry? Yeah. And the sadness? That runs deep, too. I grieve the life I had before this, the marriage I lost, the home that no longer feels safe, the version of myself that didn't second-guess everything. But I'm taking it one day at a time. The nightmares don't come as often now. Maybe someday I'll date again, though the idea of having to explain this entire mess to someone new feels overwhelming. Honestly, it's easier to just stay single for a while and focus on healing. Right now, I'm looking after myself. I've got a solid therapist, family who care, and the awareness that I've been given a second shot at life and I'm not going to waste it. I want to say thanks again to everyone who followed along, offered support, and left kind words. There were nights I couldn't sleep, stuck replaying it all in my head, and those messages meant more than you know. I thought this would be the end of my updates. I hoped it would be. I was finally settling into a peaceful rhythm. Update 3. I know I said I wouldn't post again, but something happened recently that I think is worth sharing. It's been about 6 months since the divorce was finalized. Since then, life has been quiet, which I've welcomed. I've been working on rebuilding emotionally, mentally, even physically. Just trying to find some kind of normal again. And for the most part, things have been uneventful until I got a text that stopped me in my tracks. It was from my ex-stepson. It had been over a year since I'd seen or heard from him. He's 18 now, almost 19. The message was short. He said he wanted to talk, face to face. He apologized right away and said he understood if I ignored him, but hoped I'd give him a chance to say what he needed to say. I wasn't sure what to do. I sat with it for a while. I talked to my therapist. I asked my brother what he thought. In the end, I decided to meet him. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I knew I might regret not hearing him out. I figured, at the very least, it could bring me some closure. We met in the middle of the day at a public park. I spotted him sitting on a bench, visibly nervous, wringing his hands. When I approached, he stood up and quietly said, "Thank you for meeting me." What followed was one of the most surreal conversations I've ever had. He cried. I mean, really cried. I'd seen him be sarcastic, cold, even hostile, but never like this. He told me he knew he was probably the last person I wanted to see, but he needed me to hear how sorry he was. He admitted, in no uncertain terms, that what he did was unforgivable. He said he wasn't trying to justify it, but wanted me to understand the headspace he was in at the time. He told me he'd been in a terrible place mentally, angry, confused, and deep into some conspiracy-driven junk online, especially Reddit threads that questioned everything about chronic illness. He also said his biological father regularly made comments like, "Your stepdad's not actually sick, he's just lazy," which only reinforced his doubts. None of it surprised me, but it still made my stomach turn. He said he resented how much his mom worried about me and took care of me when he couldn't see my illness. In his immature, 17-year-old mind, he decided to test whether I was faking by doing the unthinkable. He told me how losing his college spot, being rejected by friends, and facing the fallout forced him to reckon with what he did. He said, "I had to look in the mirror and face the fact that I was a terrible person." He said he stayed in therapy even after it wasn't court-ordered. He told me he'd been volunteering at a local hospital, helping transport patients and assist staff. Seeing sick and elderly people every day, he said, helped me realize how fragile life is and how stupid and dangerous I was. I mostly just listened. It was hard to even register what I was feeling. But for the first time, I saw real, honest remorse. No excuses. Just shame, regret, and pain. Then he looked me in the eyes and apologized directly. He said, "I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I tore this family apart. I'm sorry I broke your trust. I was an idiot. I almost cost you your life, and I'll never stop regretting that. I don't expect forgiveness, I just had to say this to your face." By then, he was crying, and I realized I was crying, too. I hadn't expected that. I told him I appreciated the apology. I also told him the damage he caused wasn't something I could just forget. I told him I live with fear now. That I lost my marriage, my sense of safety, my peace of mind. I said I honestly didn't know if I could ever forgive him. He nodded and said he understood. That he wasn't asking for anything except for me to hear him. Then I asked him one question, the one that's haunted me for a long time. I said, "When you saw me getting sicker, when I was barely functioning, why didn't you stop?" He looked down, wiped his face, and said quietly, "I kept telling myself it wasn't my fault. That maybe your illness was just getting worse naturally." I lied to myself. "And when you collapsed, I panicked. I thought I might have already killed you, and I was too scared to admit what I'd done. I didn't want to face it." It was painful to hear, but it was honest. Before we parted ways, he handed me a folded note. He said he wrote it in case I refused to meet him, and that I could read it or throw it away, whatever I wanted. I did read it later. It repeated much of what he said out loud, and ended with another apology and a promise to respect my boundaries. He wrote that he'd be open to future contact, but only if and when I wanted it. That was the end of our meeting. I told him I wished him well. He thanked me again for showing up. Then we walked away in different directions. Since then, I've had a lot to think about. Truthfully, hearing him own up to everything, it didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the trauma. But it gave me something I didn't realize I needed, a little bit of peace. Closure, maybe. A sense that the person who hurt me so deeply is actually trying to become someone better. Will I ever fully forgive him? I honestly don't know. Not yet, that's for sure. But I'm not shutting the door completely. It's cracked, just a little. Time will tell. For now, I'm staying focused on myself. My life is slowly settling into something calm, something stable. And this moment, this meeting, felt like a meaningful part of the healing process. I wanted to share this last update because so many of you have followed my story and supported me along the way. This chapter has been long, painful, and dark, but maybe, just maybe, there's a hint of light coming through the cracks. The person who nearly destroyed me is finally trying to make things right. And while I haven't forgiven him, I can see that he's changed, and that's something. Thank you all, truly.